All right, welcome to the CanMonkey podcast show. I'm really honored to have James on our show today. If you guys don't, I'm lucky to know who James is because I see him on social media. I get to see him on LinkedIn. You're all over the world. The world to me is outside the United States, but you're also here too. You know a lot of people that I know here. But for you guys who don't know who James is, please introduce yourself. Welcome. Who are you? What do you do? And how do you help our industry?
Sure, yeah. Thanks very much for having me on the show, first of all. So I'm James Varley. I'm the founder and CEO of Host Planet. So we are a educational resource for short-term rental hosts, property managers, investors, and industry professionals. We produce a lot of content to help people on their journey. So we've got lots of podcasts, ebook downloads, and we're hosting events. We've got blog posts. We're very active on social media, sharing mainly video clips from our podcast episodes, featuring industry experts and sharing their tips and trends and what's happening in the space. So yeah, we're all about helping hosts and property managers and shining a light on all the great stuff that's going on in the industry and being a real advocate for the short-term rental space as well.
So why'd you pick the vacation rental industry, or why'd you pick this aspect of any business out there or industry? Why this one?
Good question. So my background is all media related. So I've spent over 20 years working in the media. I started out in newspapers. So I worked for a few different newspapers in the UK, magazines, radio, TV. And then from 2013 to 2023, I was working in corporate communications on the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. So I was there for a decade. While I was in Qatar, I bought my first short-term rental, holiday let as we call it in the UK, mainly because I needed my own space to stay when I was traveling back to the UK, but also because of the rise of STR, Airbnb obviously taking over the world. And back in about 2016, I went over to San Francisco, stayed in an Airbnb for the first time because I couldn't find a hotel room for under $300 a night. Found this Airbnb, amazing space. The host was fantastic. And after that experience, I thought I should be doing this. I need my own space in the UK, and this way of hosting and building a business seems like a great opportunity. So that convinced me to get started. And when I did get started in short-term rentals, I realized that there was a lot of information out there for other types of property investment, certainly in the UK, like buy to let, long term rentals is really popular. Homes of multiple occupation is another thing which is really popular in the UK, maybe like buying off plan, that kind of thing. I found there were loads of platforms to help people in those kind of investment. But for short-term rentals, holiday lets, not so much. You were kind of like restricted to learning maybe from Airbnb or other like OTA platforms like that. And I could see that there were Facebook groups. There were Facebook groups for Airbnb hosts or like holiday lets or self catering and that kind of thing. And often I would see people in these groups joining and asking the same questions over and over again. Hey, I'm just getting started. I've got my first property. Where do I list? I've heard of this thing called Price Labs. Shall I give it a go? Should I allow pets? Where can I find a good cleaner? All this kind of stuff. And as time went by, it dawned on me more and more that like short-term rental hosts and property managers, especially when they're starting out, but also like throughout their journey, they need help and support. They need a place for resources, and maybe there's an opportunity there to build a media platform. I know a little bit about short-term rentals. I know a lot about building media platforms and content and that kind of thing. So I thought maybe there's an opportunity here to build a platform which is going to be centered around the audience will be hosts and property managers, and we're going to share high quality content and help them. And then from a business kind of point of view, it's like, well, if I can build that platform and the audience is hosts and property managers, that becomes quite a valuable audience to reach. And what I realized as I learned more and more about the sector, especially PMSs, dynamic pricing tools, they want to reach these customers really badly, but they're difficult to reach. It's not like Airbnb and Booking.com are offering you the chance to advertise on their platforms. So if I can build a platform that this is the core audience, then maybe we can attract sponsorship and collaborations from these kind of companies who want to get in front of who our core audience is. And so that's kind of the business model in a nutshell.
No, I love that. So you are like a beacon of light for those hosts and owners out there that maybe are just brand new. So are you also working with, hosts and property managers that are not brand new, that are maybe larger as well?
Yeah, so I mean, it's quite interesting when we look at the stats. I mean, we get the stats when, especially when we have free ebook downloads on our website. So when people download, we ask for their name and the number of properties that they manage, whether they're using a PMS, if so, which one, where they're located, all this kind of thing. And what we see is that the average number of rentals that people have is about 30, and then the median number is about 4 to 5. So the vast majority of our audience own multiple properties, and then we've got the bigger property managers at the top end who are managing, over 20, 50, 100, hundreds in some cases. And what we share on, especially our podcasts, we do various podcast series, and both of our main weekly shows are sponsored by Housefully. We also have another sponsorship arrangement with Sykes Holiday Cottages. We do a monthly podcast with them. And the people that are sharing their knowledge, the CEOs, often co-founders of companies, they're sharing tips and trends and best practices that are relevant whether you've got one property or whether you've got hundreds. And also, it doesn't really matter where you are in the world, because these tips, they transfer to pretty much every single country. I mean, sometimes we might talk about a specific tax situation in the UK, or we might talk about regulation in a certain location. But generally, when you're talking about hosting and hospitality, guest experience, those tips, they translate to pretty much anywhere, and it doesn't matter the stage of your journey. And I think the great thing about this industry is that it's developing at such a rapid rate. It's changing all the time. It's evolving. It's kind of feels like it's still quite early days. A lot of people say it feels like it's early days in the short-term rental space. So we're all kind of on this journey together of like sharing best practices and shining a light on the new industries and the new tools that are coming up, because it seems like there's a new AI guest messaging tool every single week. There's a different PMS all the time. There's integrations, there's all this kind of thing. So I think, yeah, we're relevant whether you're starting out or whether you've got a lot of properties. I think when I started the business, I certainly thought we're going to be a platform that's going to help new hosts. But as we've developed, and because now the wealth of content and interviews and ebooks that we have on our site, we're relevant and interesting pretty much whatever the stage of your journey.
No, you're right. Rubbish or trash, whatever you call it, and it's all the same. We're all helping or doing the same things with hospitality. So you're right. It doesn't really matter who's speaking in what country. All those points are probably very valid. And you're right. At first, it does seem like it would be, better for someone that doesn't really know much, because you're probably giving them, a whole, variety of different, contents and series, like you said. But still, if you had 20 plus properties and someone's talking from, like the CEO is talking from Hostfully, and they're talking about how they help a client with 40 plus properties, that'd be kind of in your wheelhouse. And so you're kind of bringing to light this whole other side of, because you're right, it is a brand new industry. As much as it's, been around for hundreds of years, people with second homes, it's very much new of the industry. And that's why I wanted to start this as well, is that like I get the opportunity to speak a lot to like a lot of interesting people in this industry, because I go to different conferences, but not, and then I come back to my office and I get on a phone call with someone that has one property, in Scottsdale, and they have no idea that this whole world's out there, what, what a PMS is, or what even is a price lab, or what is. And so it is nice to, share that knowledge with them. And so when people are, so you're kind of now, for most people, they're going to come to you with like, hey, I'm in this situation, how do you help me from here? Is that kind of what you're finding yourself, that now you're kind of the dot connector? People are coming to you kind of like, with the answers, because you probably do now, with all these different connections you're making, know who to connect who to.
Yeah, I think that's one comment that we've had from a number of different people, is that we are a real connector in the industry. And like some brands that we work with, it might be perhaps they've been a guest on our podcast and then they see the other guests that have been on the podcast, or maybe we're working with one sponsor or partner and then suddenly they're aware of another company because they've started working with us. So I think, yeah, we have connected a lot of people in the industry. But yeah, to kind of go back to the points that you were making there, we find that when we're speaking to these kind of high level people, CEOs, co-founders, and like you rightly say there, there's going to be people who might be on 20 properties but want to get to 50. The topics when these guys at the top of the industry are talking about how to get more direct bookings, how to deal with regulation, how to scale, these are things that we find that our audience, they kind of like, they really gobble these up really quickly. Direct bookings and scaling is something that people, everybody kind of wants to learn more about it. I think even if kind of you're happy where you are, maybe you've got a few properties and it's a bit of a pension for you, you're still interested in how people are kind of developing in this industry, and maybe at one stage when the time is right, you might want to scale and get more properties. So yeah, we found that those topics are interesting for a broad number of our audience.
And are you doing stuff on the back end with your audience, kind of figuring out who your audience is, what their needs are, who they're using on the back end? Are you gathering that data on the back end so where you can leverage that eventually to different PMS companies or different, yeah.
Yeah, so like every time, I mean, we look at our stats all the time, and you know what it's like. There are so many different platforms these days. So we have a podcast, so we can see the audio stats. We get hosted by Spotify, so we're very good at seeing Spotify stats. Not so good at seeing the other audio platform stats, but very good at seeing Spotify. Like YouTube, we've had a big commitment to YouTube recently, so we've grown literally in the last few months to hardly any YouTube subscribers. Now we're at 2,500. So we're looking there, which countries are we having the most cut through? Obviously, we see our web stats. And like I said before, we get really good data when we have free downloads from the site, or when maybe people are signing up for a free event, because that's when we ask them, what they want to hear from us, whether they're using a PMS, how many rentals they're managing. So yeah, it's really useful data to have, because of course, for us, we see ourselves as a media platform, so we always want to make sure that the content we're delivering is what our audience wants to know. So the audience is at the heart of everything we want to do. All our content is geared around, engaging them. It's got to be useful to them, maybe even a little bit entertaining, but certainly like informing as well, telling them what's going on in the industry, and bottom line, helping people build successful and sustainable STR businesses.
Can you talk about the last free event you did, just so if people are not familiar with your brand and what you do, can you give an example of what your free event was like?
Yeah, it was great. So we did an event in London, and we had lots of exhibitors and speakers there from companies across the industry. So Guesty were there, Hospitable, Price Labs, Evivo, Beyond, Touchstay, various other brands who are more local to the UK as well. And it was a boutique event, about 120 people, centre of London, and lots of educational content. We had some great panel sessions with some big property managers there. So we had three property managers on stage. I think one of them had 240 rentals, another had 100, another guy had about 80. They were talking about challenges going on in the industry, how they were dealing with them, tips, best practices. One of the guys there, he's at 97% direct booking, so he's talking about that. We had another of my famous, one of the best talks from the day was with Robin Clifford from Guesty. If people have been to a lot of STR events, they'll know who Robin is. He's one of the best speakers on the circuit, and we spoke to him about the future of short-term rentals, and we were talking about AI and flying to Australia in 10 minutes and all this kind of thing, and how AI is going to take everybody's jobs, and how it's going to benefit the short-term rental industry eventually. So Robin's got some great ideas about how things can develop. So yeah, that's the kind of thing we did in London, and we've got another event coming up in November, so it's the 11th of November. This one's a free event as well. We're doing it with Sykes Holiday Cottages. So Sykes Holiday Cottages, I think pretty much the biggest property management company in the UK. They've got about 30,000 rentals. So we're doing it with them at their main HQ, which is in Chester. So yeah, if you're interested in coming along, it's available on our website. And then next year, we're doing a roadshow. So we're going to 7 different locations across the UK, partnering with some brands and property management companies. And we're going to be hosting a lot of events in kind of STR hotspots. Again, helping hosts, helping the local area, sharing best practice knowledge, getting some great guest speakers there. And those events next year for the roadshow, there will be a ticket price for those. But yeah, it'll be an incredible amount of value for the people that join us. And those who have been to our free events will know that they're really worth coming along, and for the networking and for the knowledge that you get and the education and the connections that you make. I think, like we said before, our platform is we're proud that it's really connecting a lot of people in the industry.
I love that, and that's awesome. I mean, the only thing that could be better than that is that you come to the US, but I'm sure you got to conquer the UK first, then you'll come over here, after
Well,
that.
do you know what? Right after this podcast, I've got a call with somebody who's we're going to chat about maybe coming over to the US. So yeah, definitely
Awesome.
The US is massively on our radar. It's our second biggest market by a long way. UK's number one, US is number two. South Africa, we've got crazy web traffic from South Africa at the moment.
Wow.
But yeah, US is high on the list, and pretty much all our biggest partners are based in the US. So Hostfully, Hospitable, Beyond, we work closely with these guys. So yeah, we definitely want to get over there and hopefully bring our model a bit and get in front of all those US hosts, and yeah, see what further traction we can gain out there.
I love it. Well, so for those who are listening, how would they be able to find you, your company, this information on the next, free event you have? How do people find you?
Yeah, so head to our website. It's hostplanet.club, so club CLUB. So yeah, check out our website. There's loads of free resources on there. So if you look at the homepage, you'll get a link straight to our events. Head to the free downloads. There's a bunch of free downloads on there that you can gather. We've just released one last week with Hospitable, which is about dynamic pricing. So check that out. And yeah, there's loads of blog posts on there, and you can reach all our podcast episodes as well. Way more than 100 on there now, so yeah, lots to feast through. If you're into STR, you should definitely be following our platform.
Thanks, James. I appreciate your time, and thanks for all you're doing for the industry and the knowledge that you bring to those that are looking for it, that before didn't really have a platform, and now you're bringing one to life. So thank you, and you have a great rest of your day, and see you around.
It's been a real pleasure, and yeah, make sure you come on our podcast soon, Alex.
Yes, sir. You got it. Thank you.